everything about Brahms is complex. Schoenberg was right when he talked about Brahms the progressive, but yet he was really a classicist, and his aim was to bring the classic symphonic form really into the Romantic era. I can't think there was ever a composer before him who was so aware of what came before him, who was more learned, that knew more about early music, and yet a composer who, without any kind of outward show, would do so much and so many extraordinary things and so many revolutionary things with harmony and rhythm and form. What's interesting is Brahms, I do also as an interpreter, sometimes you really have to disappear into Brahms in the way that Brahms disappeared into himself. You look at the way the symphonies are orchestrated. In fact, you don't notice the orchestration in the way you even do in Mozart and Haydn symphonies, let alone his other contemporaries, Wagner, Mahler. The aim is for the instrumentation to serve the structure of the music, and yet, of course, it sounds extraordinary. It has this enormous depth. This idea of counterpoint, this idea that you would take 3 notes, like in the Second Symphony. Wow. Okay, 4. Da, 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 and make an entire symphony out of it. Or actually 3 other notes rising in the case of the First Symphony. Da, da, da. That you would use this material and take every kind of vitamin from this and make it almost a self-running organism. There was nothing like it in music before, and almost nothing since. Until the time of Schoenberg, one can see why Schoenberg considered himself the reluctant revolutionary. But yet Brahms was very brave, because we keep on forgetting the timeline. We all think about this battle between, not the composers, but the supporters of Wagner and Brahms. And we forget that Tristan was written 10 years before even the First Symphony of Brahms. And so in a way, the shock is not how chromatic or modern the First Symphony is, but how classical it is. And how he dared to go back to classical formulations. The sound, of course, of Brahms is very, very particular. And of course, it's steeped in the German ethos. The idea of the forests and the sound, and the sound of horns coming from a distance. Even the forest colors, there are so many autumnal colors in this. What I think is almost entirely alien to Brahms, if I may say, is Deutscher Pathos. What I loathe in some of the performances I have heard is this sense. I think this is utterly not part of Brahms. I think he would have loathed it because it's a type of outward affectation of see how emotional I am, which he would have loathed. It all comes from within. And with the orchestra, we've played the symphonies a lot now, but this time we particularly worked on the idea of colors and what is a piano and where can we really do what is it? How do we phrase? We know, for instance, Brahms loved completely different performers. He loved Joachim, who played with almost no vibrato, as we hear from the recordings. He loved Richard Mühlfeld, the clarinetist, who played with much more vibrato than any clarinetist before and since. What he loved was people who made phrases and who had an individual way of phrasing. There was no one way of performing. But in a Brahms score, to actually go to the point where you play piano where he says piano, it's quite hard work for all of us. And sometimes we have to say, okay, maybe he really does mean something different. So that was our journey. Who knows? As with everything else, the greater the pieces, the more likely you are to fail, hopefully better than the time before. Let's hope. It's been a wonderful journey.